Wait a second. Say that one more time. You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, son. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. I had to reboot the system. Something was off there, but thank you and welcome. And it's a great honor to be here with you all again in fellowship and to share time and space speaking about the deeper secrets of the word and scripture and current events and prophecy and how it all comes together. And without a doubt, I do believe that this is the generation that was spoken about and prophesied to receive, to be the recipients of those things that have been written down, hidden within the word, and that we've also seen in the past as far as the fig tree generation that right before the reestablishment of Israel as a nation, which was also prophetic with the blooming of the fig tree, that a whole cache of ancient manuscripts was discovered. Two, in fact. One kind of known as the secret teachings of Jesus Christ, the Messiah, released and published in book form as being such, and the reason the Nag Hammadi codices were disclosed as such is because at the very beginning of many of those manuscripts, which are attributed to having been written down by the different apostles, some even his stepbrothers, Thomas and James, and that they begin with these are the secret words or the secret teachings of the Messiah, and that in for Ezra, which I do want to bring that up. There's a passage there in 4 Ezra chapter 12, verse 38. It says, and teach them to the wise of the people, whose hearts thou knowest may comprehend, and keep these secrets. That Ezra had prayed to the Most High, to Yahuwah, to reveal to him the secrets, the word, and the prophecy, and lost during the time that Nebuchadnezzar overthrew, well, was basically allowed by the angels to enter into Jerusalem and to overthrow the city and destroy the temple, and that he burned all of the manuscripts which had been kept within the holy temple. And because of that, all of the knowledge, all of the wisdom of the ancients, which had been passed down from generation to generation, it was entirely annihilated, lost forever. And what a tragedy that would be and was. And this is like, losing the Library of Alexandria when that was burnt down because there were so many wisdom texts that had been collected and gathered there within that collection. But these were the inspired manuscripts, the word that had been passed down through the prophets and, among the children of Adam. And as we had seen in the show that we did just a week ago on the revelation of the Magi, that the children of Seth, they were instructed that the Messiah would come into the flesh. He would be immaculately conceived, that one of the signs and the wonders which would be attributed to his coming, his incarnation into mortal embodiment was that a virgin would conceive, and that his mother Mary, the Virgin Mary, known as the Virgin even late in her life, all throughout her life, she was called the Virgin, the Holy Virgin, the Theotokos, which was the receptacle, the vessel of the Lord of God and the mother of Christ, that she was confirmed to be a virgin even after his entrance, immaculate conception into the world. And so he was the promise, and his coming was passed down and was a long awaited, was not only, prophetically spoken about by Isaiah and Micah and others, Enoch, the son of man, but even Adam, he was the first to pass down the prophecy of what he was told by the word of the Lord about his coming to be born of his bloodline, of his lineage, and that he would be the seed of the woman that would crush the head of the serpent's seed. And those of you that are familiar with the work that we've done, we share the story of how it was that this prophecy was fulfilled. Genesis 3:15, that the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and this the Messiah crushing the head, the skull of the serpent seed, this was fulfilled when he was crucified on the cross, and that Goliath's skull had been buried some 900,000 years before by Daniel, who had stood up to the boast and the mockery of Goliath, the Philistine giant and champion, that for 40 days poked fun at Saul and the Israelites. And having and been given a dream that he would stand up for the Lord and for the nation, he realized that the moment of victory had come, and he took up the challenge, and stunning Goliath, he used his own sword to cut off his head, to remove it as a trophy, and taking it back to Jerusalem, he buried it there at Golgotha, Goliath of Gath, and Calvary, the hill of the skull, so that almost a millennia later, when Christ would be born and convicted by the Pharisees, the seed of the serpent that conspired his murder, this prophecy would be fulfilled. And so tonight, I wanted to talk about the second advent of the Messiah and the promise of his return, where he spoke about in John that he would go to prepare a place for us and that he would return again. Let me actually. And the book that I'm going to be speaking about this is found in the Apocalypse of Baruch. And this manuscript is contained in one of the manuscripts that we released called the Great Commission 3. And it has all of the end time apocalypses, the narratives that were written for the fig tree generation and which contain these revelations. And so we're going to look at a portion of this manuscript and apply it to where we are. I'm looking for the verse that speaks about um, his return. Okay, well, anyways, I'm not going to hold it up. I'll probably find it on the following break and then I'll share it then. But let us go ahead and get into, and let me open the chat room and get back to the place that I was, because I had to reboot right before the show because of technical difficulties, but we're good and we're live, and so thoroughly pleased to be here with all of you. And I will at different times take a look into the chat to share your commentary, because I do believe that you are an integral part of what we are doing here, and that all of you are so wise in your commentary and with your insight. And I do want to include the fellowship that you are sharing in the chat. And also, again, some of the shows and the interviews and the things that we brought forth there are still being uh, stricken from the platform. Our Endeavor Freedom channel just had received another strike and had some videos removed, and so I'm going to try to be careful, but I'm going to always try to speak the truth as well and to reveal the things that we have been blessed in discernment to learn and to share with you. And I would ask that all of you pray for the protection of our show, our family and our ministry as we do for all of you. And let us, as a family in Christ, utilize the power and the benefit and the privilege of prayer. How easy it is for us to take a moment and just pray for each other. And let us also remember how it was that Rob Skiba implored us to remember a time, 444, whenever in the PM and the AM, that whenever this time was to come and occur within the day, that let us remember each other, remember the family, the fellowship of Christ and the disciples of Christ, the ecclesia, wherever we may be, that when we come together and focus and in prayer and to share a thought for the protection, the blessing, and the guidance, discernment of each other and one another, that where two or more are gathered, there also the Messiah joins us in fellowship. And so, let's honor and remember and in memorial share um, the instruction that Rob shared with us in doing this for each other and one another as we move through these strange and uncertain times. All right. And thank you again, all of you, for attending to and your willingness to join each other and one another in doing so. And I thank all of you in advance for your prayers. All right, so we're gonna. Oh, before I get into this, let me share quickly because we are almost at break. I just want to share the contents, especially for the many new listeners that are joining us now and have come to hear and to learn from the things that we've been greatly blessed to understand now. Let me bring this up. I just want to share the contents of this manuscript so that you can know as to the kind of things you will learn, read, and be able to have access to. All right, here we go. And remember, I told you that with regard to the Great Commission series, the first two books are on, it's like an extended book of Acts that Luke wrote in the gospel narrative. But the third book is focused on the apocalyptic text. And they have the Apocalypse of Abraham, the Apocalypse of Moses, the 14th vision of Daniel, the Apocalypse of Elijah, the Hebrew Apocalypse of Elijah, the fourth book of Ezra, the Apocalypse of Sirach, the Sibling Oracles, Book 2, the Apocalypse of Zephaniah, the Apocalypse of Baruch, which we'll be going into after the first break, the Apocalypse of Thomas, the Apocalypse of Peter, the first Apocalypse of James, the second Apocalypse of James, the Apocalypse of Paul, the Revelation of St. John the Theologian, the 10 signs of the end of the age, the Apocalypse of Samuel, the Apocalypse of Zerubbabel, and the vision of Adaman. And remember, the word apocalypse means disclosure. All right, we'll be right back, everybody.
I learned very young from my parents, absolutely, that you don't try to build a wall. You don't set out to build a wall. You don't say, I'm going to build the biggest, baddest, greatest wall that's ever been built. You don't start there. You say, I'm going to lay this brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid. There will not be one brick on the face of the earth that's going to be laid better than this brick that I'm going to lay in this next 10 minutes. Yeah. And you do that every single day. And soon you have a wall. You have a wall. And I think psychologically, the advantage that gives me over a lot of people that have been in competition with in different situations is it's difficult to take the first step when you look how big the task is. The task is never huge. It's always one brick.
Me too. Extendivite is more than just a heart tonic. Do you have any of these symptoms? Night cramps in the hands and feet. Your arms and legs often go to sleep. On short walks, do your legs get aches and pains? Is your memory worse than it used to be? Ankles that swell late in the day? Has your blood pressure increased lately? If you answered yes to even one of these questions, you may have early warning signs of arterial blockages. Your body is saying that it is time to take Extendivite. These are not the normal signs of aging. They are the warning signs that accompany blocked arteries. Get your Extendivite today. Extendivite is available in capsule or liquid form for just $69.95 for a 2-month supply. To get started, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extend.
Hi, I'm Sergeant Jim Ram, retired. In early 2012, I was facing a laundry list of chronic health conditions that my physician was telling me were incurable. I knew there had to be a better way, and I learned how I could reverse every one of my ailments with science-based, clinically verified medical nutrition. In just a few months, I was able to reverse high blood pressure, gastric reflux, sleep apnea, arthritis, degenerative disc disease, heart arrhythmia, AFib, and many more. And I've lost over 70 pounds and kept it off. Now I'm hosting a radio program that's dedicated to helping my listeners do the same. If you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, if you're sick of being used as an ATM by your doctor, then you'll want to tune into the Your DIY Health radio program here on Truth Frequency Radio every Thursday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern and 6 to 8 a.m. Pacific.
RTFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, for a second portion. I did find that verse that I wanted to share with you in the first segment. It is from John chapter 14. And it says, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. And whither I go, ye know, and the way ye know. So, we know that Christ went to establish this place in paradise, and that he took with him, as he had promised, as he had spoken and revealed to Adam and Eve before their banishment from the from New Jerusalem, the city of God, from what is our first estate, from the place where the tree of life is in the midst of the garden of God, what is called paradise, which is found in the third heaven, that there in New Jerusalem, that this is the home of the righteous, and that when Christ died on the cross, for the 3 days that he was away from his body, that he descended into Sheol at that time and brought liberty to the captives in the way that has been written about both by Isaiah and also David within these Psalms, where it speaks about his breaking open the gates of iron, the doors of brass, and revealing Sheol. And this was exactly what had happened. And there's one of the deceptions that is being put forth, and which a lot of people are confused about, has to do with incarnation and our having had previous spiritual embodiment, that we were known and that we existed before entering into the physical life form of the, within the womb of our mothers, that the fetuses that had developed and that were carried within the womb of our mothers, that we did exist in a spiritual embodiment prior to our incarnation into this mortal world. However, that being said, we are not reincarnating and cycling through life, and we're not being born over multiple lifetime and generation, as is pushed forth by certain religions, certain belief systems, and especially with the new age thought mentality that so many are buying into and accepting as belief. And the reason I say and affirm this is because when you read the story of the Gospel of Nicodemus, who was the brother, and he was a very wise Pharisee. He was the brother of Gamaliel. And Gamaliel and Nicodemus being brothers, they were also brothers with Joseph of Arimathea. And Joseph of Arimathea was also a very wise priest, and that he had connections with the Pharisee in that regard. However, all three of them came to accept the Messiah as Savior, and that the word of the Lord was the fulfillment, that Yahushua, meaning Yah's salvation, that he was the fulfillment of the prophecies that had been written down and encoded within the word. And so, and not only did he promise to come and to be born of Adam's bloodline, but that he promised to come again at the end of the world, right before the wrath of God was to be poured out on the wicked and those not written into the books of life. That he would come with 10,000s of his saints in order to save the sheep, that as the good shepherd, he would come to save the believers, those that accepted the promise of the cross and salvation through him as the arbiter of life and death and holding the keys to the kingdom. And so this is why it says, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. So he is coming to the earth, and New Jerusalem is coming with him, and that it will be here on the earth that he will reign and rule, and God willing, we will be numbered with the elect to join him for what will be the Sabbath rest, the day unto the Lord as is 1,000 years. And so that's what's going to be spoken about specifically in this manuscript that we're going to go into. It's called the Apocalypse of Baruch, and it's one that a lot of people are not very familiar. And if you're not familiar with who Baruch was, he was the scribe, the holy scribe, that had written down and followed. He was a good friend and loyal uh, compatriot to Jeremiah the prophet. And that David was also a visionary during this time. That they were instrumental in writing down and documenting the and warning, specifically Jeremiah and Baruch. They gave warning and they were told about the coming destruction of Jerusalem, and that the angels would allow Nebuchadnezzar's army to enter into and to destroy the city because of the abomination which had been taken up and accepted by Hezekiah and his family and the priests. And Jeremiah was locked up because they did not want to hear about what the Father, what Yahuwah was revealing in regard to the coming destruction. And so the Apocalypse of Baruch begins with a warning of the same kind of warning that Jeremiah had shared with the people and with Hezekiah and was ignored. We're not going to go into all of that, but we're going to skip to the portion which is specific to, very interestingly, to it speaks about how when all of the souls that are numbered are born, then the end will come. And so there is a specific number of people that are to incarnate into mortal embodiment. And that when this number is reached, then the end will come. So we're going to begin with verse 22. And it says of chapter 22 and 23, this is God's reply to Baruch's prayer. He will fulfill his promise. Time needed for its accomplishment. Things must be judged in the light of their consummation. And 22, till all souls are born, the end cannot come. So let us go into it here. And it came to pass after these things that, lo, the heavens were opened, and I saw, and power was given to me, and a voice was heard from on high, and it said unto me, Baruch, Baruch, why are you troubled? He who travels by a road but does not complete it, or who departs by sea but does not arrive at the port, can he be comforted? Or he who promises to give a present to another but does not fulfill it, is it not robbery? Or he who sows the earth but does not reap its fruit in its season, does he not lose everything? Or he who plants a plant unless it grows till the time suitable to it, does he who planted it expect to receive fruit from it? Or a woman who has conceived, if she bring forth untimely, does she not assuredly slay her infant? Or he who builds a house, if he does not roof it and complete it, can it be called a house? Tell me. And I answered and said, Not so, O Lord, my Lord. And he answered and said unto me, Why, therefore, are you troubled about that which you know not? And why are you ill at ease about things in which you are ignorant? For as you have not forgotten the people who now are, and those who have passed away, so I remember those who are appointed to come. Because when Adam sinned, and death was decreed against those who should be born, then the multitude of those who should be born was numbered. And for that number, a place was prepared where the living might dwell, and the dead might be guarded. Before, therefore, the number aforesaid is fulfilled, the creature will not live again, for my spirit is the creator of life. And Sheol will receive the dead. And again, it is given to you to hear what things are to come after these times. For truly, my redemption has drawn nigh, and it is not far distant as aforetime. And so, specific, because when Adam sinned and death was decreed against those who should be born, that when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they lost their bright nature. They were placed into mortal embodiment and they came under the authority of death. As Yahuwah had said, in the day that you touch or eat thereof, you shall die. And indeed, they did die. And in that day, they died, because a day as being 1,000 years, Adam and Eve lived to be 930 years old. And they died within a week of one another. But here again, it says that the multitude of those who should be born was numbered. And for that number, a place was prepared where the living might dwell. This is the home of the righteous, New Jerusalem. And the dead might be guarded. In the book of Nicodemus, when Adam and his children are restored back to their first estate, they are taken up to the lake, the Arturian lake, which is outside of the city of God, New Jerusalem. There they were baptized, and being made holy, they were allowed to enter into the city of God. Yeah, but before they did so, they met the thief, Demas, who told them that he had been crucified that day with Yahushua, and that asking him to be remembered, Christ told him, "This day you will be with me in paradise." And he was sent by the angel there to the outskirts to await for the Messiah, that he had descended into Sheol, and he was going to gather Adam and his righteous descendants. And that going to New Jerusalem, once Christ arrived with Adam and all those that had, died up until Demas, the thief that was on the right hand of the cross, when they entered into New Jerusalem, they encountered Enoch and Elijah, who told them that they had been spared from death and that they were being held so that they could be the witnesses that would accuse the Antichrist of being the false Messiah. And that at that time he would kill them and leave their bodies in the streets of Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem on the earth. And that thereafter they would be resurrected. And so this is what will occur. And this was also confirmed by the many people that were resurrected with Christ and that were seen in the streets of Jerusalem, and which testified as to their deliverance from Sheol, that truly liberation was brought to the captives, those that were held within Abraham's bosom. And Sheol was emptied. And these people, Adam, Seth, uh, Enos, all those that were born from generation to generation, they were not reincarnating. They were not being born again of a different bloodline and of a different time and generation. No, their souls were gathered, and Adam had to wait 5,500 years, as he was told by the Messiah, that after 5.5 days, great days, which equal 5,500 years, that after this duration of time would pass, that Christ would be born of his bloodline, and that when he was killed, crucified, murdered on the cross, that at that time he would descend down into Sheol to free them and to bring them, return them to their bright nature and to their first estate. And this is what it says. This is what is confirmed within the word here. It tells us that before, therefore, the number aforesaid is fulfilled, the creature will not live again. For my spirit is the creator of life, and Sheol will receive the dead. And again, it is given to you to hear what things are to come after these times. For truly my redemption has drawn nigh, and is not far distant as aforetime. And so, the Most High is long suffering, but he tells us that at the end of the second world age, that there will be a new Jerusalem, a new heaven and a new earth, and that he will come at that time to restore us to our bright nature, our glorified form. And so when we come back from the break, we're going to go into what is the coming judgment. And I don't want to get into it now because we only have like 3 minutes before that time. Let me see here. And I will check the chat once more. But let me also log into the switchboard. For some reason it... Okay, anyways. I know we're just a couple of minutes out, so let me just check the chat. Let me see if there's comment that I can share with you. Again, I appreciate all of you taking the time to join us and for sharing such kindness and such awesome fellowship with each other. Hebrew Hawaiian asks, Zen, is this the book that describes where the tree of knowledge of good and evil originates? I do believe that there is mention of this within this text, but there are others as well. We see in Revelation that it speaks about the tree of life being in the midst of the garden of God. And we know that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was also there within. And that when they ate from this tree, of course, we know that this was also symbolic for what we see as Samael, the viper of God, that it was the beguilement of Eve, which was metaphorically what is spoken about as her eating the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that's what led to her pregnancy, which is why the punishment towards the serpent was I will put enmity between thy seed and the woman's seed. And that Eve would have to bear children in sorrow. And Adam, of course, would have to work the soil
My name is
to
Ella,
feed his children.
and
All right,
I'm
we'll
10
be
years
right
old.
back for a second portion.
I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
When I say climate change, what do you think of? Blah, blah, blah. There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, 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 blah. We can no longer let the people in power decide. Blah, blah, blah. Did you hear me? What do we blah, blah, blah. But it starts with blah. What do we say? Blah, blah, blah. This is all we hear. What do we blah, blah, blah. What do you think, sir? They say blah. What do we say? Blah, 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 blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders. Words that sound great, but let's look at the numbers. We can no longer let the people in power decide. What do you think? It's not blah, blah, blah. Of course, we need constructive dialogue, but they don't have ideas. Blah, blah, blah. They invite therapeutic young people to meetings like this to pretend that they are listening. This is not about some expensive, politically correct green act. Blah, blah, blah. There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Big Bang better. Blah, blah, blah. The economy. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Did you hear me? What do we want? Blah, blah, blah. But it starts with blah. What do we say? Blah, blah, blah. This is all we hear. What do we want? Blah, blah, blah. What do you think, sir? They say blah. What do we say? Blah, 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 blah. I think climate change calls for innovation, cooperation. They say they want solution, and then not holding leaders accountable for their action, or rather inaction. Blah, blah. We need to walk the talk. Blah, 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 blah. If this is what they consider to be climate action, we don't want it. Blah, blah, blah. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Blah, blah, blah. There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Big Bang better. Blah, blah, blah. Economy. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Did you hear me? What do we want? Blah, blah, blah. But it starts with blah. When do we want it? Blah, blah.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
ERTFR.
Radio.
All right. Thank you again, everybody. It's so good to see so many of you and, those that are new as well. But in speaking about the tree of life, one of my most favorite manuscripts is called The Vision of Paul. And it describes in greater detail than anywhere else that I've seen what is and what occurs to a righteous soul and a wicked soul at the moment of death. And how they are brought before the seat of the Most High to have determination laid upon them as to whether they are deserving of being contained and being held for the time before the resurrection of the dead, with those that are numbered with the elect or with those that are condemned to Sheol. And when Christ descended down into Sheol and emptied it out, there was said to be only 3 that were left behind: Cain, Judith, and Herod. But that everybody else was found to be worthy of the salvation and the grace that the Messiah had extended to the world in bringing a forgiveness of their sins and allowing them to have a renewed slate with regard to the judgment that would be brought against them. And so, hello, Eric and Stephanie, good to see you, Sister Hebrew Ryan, Mama P, and Adrian from Oz, everybody else that is on the scroll. We do have, as always, and it's always nice to see a large gathering, and that's a great blessing. But anyways, let me go ahead and go back into this, because I think you will be interested in this next portion as well, because it speaks about, as does Isaiah chapter 66, about the millennial age and about what happens after the gathering, the harvest. And again, this is one of those manuscripts which not only confirms the Messiah, Yahushua, as the Son of God, but that he, together with the Father and the Holy Spirit, the mother of the angels, that they rule as a collective, as Elohim, as a Godhead. And I know that, a lot of people believe this to be a Catholic concept, but as I show in my work, and as the Thracian Chronicles also affirm, that the concept of the Godhead, which includes a feminine Holy Spirit, is ancient, far more ancient than even the foundations of the world. And all of that is found in my latest books on wisdom, the Holy Spirit as the feminine aspect of the Godhead, books 1 and 2. But let us continue to chapter 24. And I am reading from the Apocalypse of Baruch for those that are just now joining the review. It says this: For behold, the days come, and the books shall be opened, in which are written the sins of all those who have sinned, and again also the treasuries in which the righteousness of all those who have been righteous in creation is gathered. For it shall come to pass at that time that you shall see in the many that are with you the long suffering of the Most High, which has been throughout all generations, who has been long suffering towards all who are born, alike those who sin and those who are righteous. And I answered and said, But behold, O Lord, no one knows the number of those things which have passed, nor yet of those things which are to come. For I know indeed that which has befallen us, but what will happen to our enemies I know not. And when you will visit your works. Chapters 25 and 26 on the sign of the coming judgment. And he answered and he said unto me, You too shall be preserved, till that time, till that sign which the Most High will work for the inhabitants of the earth in the end of days. This therefore shall be the sign. When a stupor shall seize the inhabitants of the earth, and they shall fall into many tribulations. And again, when they shall fall into great torments, and it will come to pass when they say in their thoughts by reason of their much tribulation, the mighty one doth no longer remember the earth. Yes, it will come to pass when they abandon hope that the time will then awake. 26. And I answered and I said, Will that tribulation which is to be continued a long time, will that tribulation which is to be continue a long time? And will that necessity embrace many years? This is about the 12 woes that are to come upon the earth and the Messiah and the temporary messianic kingdom. And he answered and said unto me, Into 12 parts is that time divided, and each one of them is reserved for that which is appointed for it. In the first part there shall be the beginning of commotions, and in the second part there shall be slayings of the great ones, and in the third part the fall of many by death, and in the fourth part the sending of the sword, and in the fifth part famine and the withholding of rain, and in the sixth part earthquakes and terrors, the eighth wanting, the ninth, and in the eighth part a multitude of specters and attacks of the Shadim. The Shadim is, I believe, a Hebrew word which means specters, demons, shades. So supernatural. It is also said that the Shadim are contained within the north, where the giants are also the locust army are to be released at the end of days. And in the ninth part, the fall of fire. And in the 10th part, raping and much oppression. And the 11th part, wickedness and unchastity. And in the 12th part, confusion from the mingling together of all those things aforesaid. For these parts together, for these parts of that time are reserved, and shall be mingled one with another, and minister one to another. For some shall leave out some of their own and receive in its stead from others, and some complete their own and that of others, so that those may not understand who are upon the earth in those days, that this is the consummation of the times. So let me read those signs one more time. It says that into 12 parts is that time divided, and each one of them is reserved for that which is appointed for it. In the first part, there shall be the beginning of commotions. So, sort of like what Christ said in regard to there shall be wars and rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines, waves of the sea roaring, diverse places. So, the beginning of commotions. And in the second part, there shall be slayings of the great ones. So I'm assuming the great ones are the apostles, the prophets. So, those that stand for the word and the testimony, they are disciples of Christ. I'm assuming this. Of course, I don't have. It could be that the great ones are speaking about, leaders, world leaders. I don't really know. But I don't consider, world leaders as the great ones. I consider the men of God, the women of God to be the great ones. And we know that there's going to be a war against the saints and persecution for his namesake. But let us continue anyways. And in the third part, the fall of many by death. And in the fourth part, the sending of the sword. So all of that, sounds like war, persecution in some form. And in the fifth part, famine and the withholding of rain. I think we're right there with regard to this one. That without a doubt, the people are not able to any longer afford to feed themselves or that of their children, especially if they have a rather large family. And the withholding of rain, I think that there is, and I don't, again, blame climate change on humanity. And I don't, even though I do think, yeah, it does have something to do with carbon emissions, the heating up of the earth and what will be the destruction by fire, that is all foretold and prophetic. It's not that we have any responsibility, I mean, full responsibility for its creation and for the unfolding thereof, because it is scriptural and has been written into the scriptures for thousands of years that the earth is going to die and be destroyed by fire, and that there would be rain and water and drinking water would become a very rare commodity. So much so that the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, there will be little rain and little water to be found to drink. And so you don't want to be here for that either. And in the sixth part, earthquakes and terrors. And in the eighth part, a multitude of specters and attacks of the Shaddim. So I take that where it says sixth part, earthquakes and terrors. I think that the earthquakes are going to be part responsible for the release of what are supernatural entities from what is Sheol and the deep below us. And that there are many creatures living within the interior of the earth and in the far, like the national parks, things like Bigfoot and reptilians and werewolves, lycanthropes and things like that, those things which we believe to be nothing more than fantasy or fairy tale, or the stories of Hollywood and uh, nightmare, but there's very real aspects to these specters and the attacks of the Shaddim, as it says here, and that even the prophecies with regard to the Hopi, um, the blue and red star Kachina, it also speaks about the same thing, that there's an overlap of the spiritual and material worlds, and that these shadow people and entities, especially with people's fascination and their involvement in the occult, there's repercussions for those kind of things. People that are inviting specters to enter into their lives, and that afterwards, once they have committed such acts, they don't know how to rid themselves of, the visitation and their interaction, especially if they just all of a sudden want to stop being harassed by these entities. It's not that simple, especially if you're a non-believer and you have a fascination with the occult and you invite these things into your life. That's going to be a really bad day for people. Bad night, especially. Many bad nights. And in the ninth part, the fall of fire. We spoke about this and how it is connected to the stars come crashing to the earth, and that it is part of these stars come crashing to the earth that sets the earth ablaze, and that this leads to the recreation of the heavens and the earth. And in the 10th part, raping and much oppression. we are seeing that in, you know, the wars in Ukraine, the wars all over the world, the oppression. I mean, this is, you know, what's going on in Israel and other places. The 11th part, wickedness and unchastity. I mean, what is it? I mean, we have just this upcoming weekend, all the rainbow and the pride celebrations and all of that. And if you want to see some wickedness and unchastity, I mean, there's a whole lot of that going on and part of that whole movement. And in the 12th part, confusion from the mingling together of all those things aforesaid. Well, I mean, already we see all of these things being a part of the world that we live in. And so, what does that say for where we are? All right, let us continue. For these parts of that time are reserved and shall be mingled one with another and minister one to another. All right, continuing on. Nevertheless, whoever understands shall then be wise, for the measure and reckoning of that time are 2 parts a week of 7 weeks. And so, 2 parts of a week, that's 3.5 days. Of 7 weeks, that's so 3.5 days, 3.5 days, 42 months, 7 years. And so these 12 parts segment into what are these 7 years. And if we're already seeing all this, what does that say for where we are? You know, are we already in the tribulation? Well, certainly the Great Tribulation is the last 42 months. And the last 42 months are said to be where the Antichrist is revealed and is leading over what is this one world order. And I think that that is the next domino to fall, in my opinion. All right, I'm going to skip just a little bit. Going to verse 6. It says, But if, O Lord, those things shall assuredly come to pass, which you have foretold to me, so do you show this also unto me, if I indeed have found grace in your sight? Is it in one place or in one part of the parts of the earth that those things are come to pass? Or will the whole earth experience them? And he answered and said unto me, Whatever will then befall, will befall the whole earth. Therefore all who live will experience them. For at that time I will protect only those who are found in those selfsame days in this land. And it shall come to pass when all is accomplished that was to come to pass in those parts, that the Messiah shall then begin to be revealed. And Behemoth shall be revealed from his place, and Leviathan shall ascend from the sea. Those 2 great monsters which I created on the 5th day of creation, and shall have kept until that time. And then they shall be for food for all that are left. The earth also shall yield its fruit 10,000-fold, and on each vine there shall be 1,000 branches, and each branch shall produce 1,000 clusters, and each cluster produce 1,000 grapes, and each grape produce a core of wine. And those who have hungered shall rejoice. Moreover, also they shall behold marvels every day. For wind shall go forth from before me to bring every morning the fragrance of aromatic fruits, and at the close of the day, clouds distilling the dew of health. And it shall come to pass at that selfsame time that the treasury of manna shall again descend from on high, and they will eat of it in those years, because these are they who have come to the consummation of time. So this is speaking about the millennial age, because it is in that time that it says that all the trees will produce abundantly. And those measures are spoken of in regard to the millennial age. And it shall come to pass after these things, when the time of the advent of the Messiah is fulfilled, that he shall return in glory. All right, when we come back for the final segment, we're going to go into the resurrection and to, the what is the harvest, the separation of the wheat and the tares.
You need to get this in your spirit, because I don't know what you're walking through, but some of you right now,
I love motherhood more than I could have ever imagined. One of the most important things to me is nurturing a strong foundation in Yahusha's character in our children. That said, I made sheets that went over the fruits of the Spirit, the armor of God, the 10 Commandments, and creation days. Each day at breakfast, we would go over these and then read books like Cat in the Hat that just felt so void in meaning, but they loved the rhymes. I looked everywhere for rhyming biblical principles and couldn't find any. That's when I decided I would make them myself. Praise God, we now have our first book, Eliana and Ezra's Journey Through the Fruits of the Spirit, a first in a series. Every morning we now can continue to build strong principles even through rhymes, and I wanted to offer it to the babies in your life too. Please go to Sacred Word Publishing and search Fruits of the Spirit to get your copy. Or you can go to prophecyforchildren.com. Thank you so much.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Break by the sun, it's off in a mansion that's got to be planets like ours. So conceive of a face on the surface of Mars, so in need of a meaning and purpose. We've lost indeed, they believe that they sight beyond God, so that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve and eventually reach what they seek and then solve the problems of man, but they really don't know that they are. The works of our hands are but just filthy bricks. We travel the lands to dig up our lamps, and within a bunch of the facts of imagining God's beginning in Christ. The activists,
All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. And this will give me just a little time to go into some of the other aspects of this manuscript. And you see why I think that the apocalyptic manuscripts are so critical for understanding, especially if you want to better understand what are the end time and the last days and how all of this is covered in so many places, because it is, I mean, the book of Revelation, yes, is and shares and brings forth the narrative of the end of days and the kind of events that would be happening in the world. That when the apostles asked the Messiah specifically, they asked him of his return and the signs that would accompany the end of the age. And, that's when he told them about there will be, first, he warned them to not be deceived. Let no man deceive you. And then he told them about the wars and the rumors of wars and the earthquakes and the famines and the waves of the sea roaring, and went into the whole thing of know ye the parable of the fig tree, that in the time of its blooming, that this would be the generation that would see the fulfillment of all prophecy and of his return. And Peter was the only one that asked him, as to what the blooming of the fig tree was. And he told him how it was the regathering of the house of Israel. Um, that's great. Sherry Papina says that she is reading along from the book of the Great Commission 3, the Apocalypse of Baruch. And yes, that is the manuscript that we are reading from and highlighting. And I'm going to be sharing more, even though we did an entire, during the Digital Readers Club, where we read from together, took turns reading from the chapters and the paragraphs of these different manuscripts, and we went through each of them one by one. And there's a lot of really incredible information within these manuscripts, but I want to highlight because, in our news, in the mainstream, every day we are seeing a fulfillment of all these things, especially now the strong delusion, which could deceive even the very elect if it were possible. What is that strong delusion? In my opinion, it has everything to do with the revelation that is being put forth that the ancient aliens, the fallen angels, the extraterrestrials, that they are the creators of humanity. and that they are the ones that somehow jumped the gun on evolution and mixing with the seed of men, that they created modern humanity. That's the story they want you to believe. And many people are buying into it. Many people are ready to bend the knee to these fallen angels and to what will be the revealing of Antichrist. Because I, without a doubt, believe that Antichrist is going to be one of these ancient aliens, these fallen deities. Grace LVN5 says, I checked out Destiny Lab. They are awesome. Yes, they are. And for those that don't know, Destiny Lab is the one that did the intro music that came on just this last segment. Ezekiel's Wheel is the name of the song. It is my most favorite song, and they are my most favorite band. And I think their music is so conscious and so affirming in regard to truth. And that it can really, for those of you that have children that love hip hop, well, this reveals the truth and covers so much in regard to those things that are not spoken about by the church, by the mainstream, by the majority opinion, and which this generation is in desperate need to understand and to look into and to know. Um, Jamali says that Jeremiah 24 tells how we are in the fig tree generation. And yes, the Antichrist is going to try to be, as he said, I will exalt my throne above the stars and the clouds of God. I will be like the Most High. You're so very, you are very welcome, Grace. And yes, Destiny Lab, they are awesome. Check out their music. You can go to destinylab.com. They have a lot of incredible CDs. There's so much music that I love by them. Uh, uh, we'll definitely have to do another show with them very soon, and maybe spend entire shows sharing segments from their music too. I think you'll totally dig it. All right, but let me get back into this. We only have a short time. This is about the resurrection. Chapters 30. Then all who have fallen asleep in hope of him shall rise again. And it shall come to pass at that time that the treasuries will be opened, in which is preserved the number of the souls of the righteous. And they shall come forth, and a multitude of souls shall be seen together in one assemblage of one thought. And the first shall rejoice, and the last shall not be grieved. For they know that the time has come of which it is said that it is the consummation of the times. But the souls of the wicked, when they behold all these things, shall then waste away the more. For they shall know that their torment has come, and their perdition has arrived. And so, again, this is the division of the wheat and the tares. Let both grow together until the time of the end. And in the time of the end, I will send my angels as reapers to gather the tares for burning and the wheat for preservation. This is the dividing the Matthew 25, the goat and the sheep. And, again, God willing, we will all be numbered with the elect and deserving to enter into New Jerusalem for what will be the celebration, the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. This is appropriate. Baruch exhorts the people to prepare for even worse evils. And it came to pass after these things that I went to the people and said unto them, Assemble unto me all your elders, and I will speak words unto them. And they all assembled in the valley of the Kidron. And I answered and said unto them, Hear, O Israel, and I will speak to you. And give ear, O seed of Jacob, and I will instruct you. Forget not Zion. Forget not 9/11. But hold in remembrance the anguish of Jerusalem. For lo, the days come when everything that is shall become the prey of corruption, and be as though it had not been. But as for you, if you prepare your hearts, so as to sow in them the fruits of the law, it shall protect you in that time, in which the Mighty One is to shake the whole creation. Because after a little time the building of Zion will be shaken in order that it may be built again. But that building will not remain, but will again after a time be rooted out, and will remain desolate until the time. And afterwards it must be renewed in glory and perfected forevermore. Therefore we should not be distressed so much over the evil which has now come as over that which is still to be. For there will be a greater trial than these two tribulations when the Mighty One will renew his creation, a new heaven and a new earth. And now do not draw near to me for a few days, nor seek me till I come to you. And it came to pass when I had spoken to them all these words that I, Baruch, went my way. And when the people saw me setting out, they lifted up their voice and lamented and said, To where are you departing from us, Baruch? And are you forsaking us as a father who forsakes his orphan children and departs from them? Are these the commands which your companion Jeremiah the prophet commanded you? And said unto you, Look to this people till I go and make ready the rest of the brethren. In Babylon, against whom has gone forth the sentence that they should be led into captivity. And now, if you also forsake us, it were good for us all to die before you, and then that you should withdraw from us. All right. There is the lament of Baruch, but I want to tell you of the vision that he had, and then we'll have to end with this. And when I had said these things, I fell asleep there, and I saw a vision in the night. And lo, a forest of trees planted on the plain, and lofty and rugged rocky mountains surrounded it. And that forest occupied much space, and lo, over against it arose a vine, and from under it there went forth a fountain peacefully. Now that fountain came to the forest and was stirred into great waves, and those waves submerged that forest. And suddenly they rooted out the greater part of that forest and overthrew all the mountains which were round about it. And the height of the forest began to be made low, and the top of the mountains was made low, and that fountain prevailed greatly, so that it left nothing of that great forest save one cedar only. Also, when it had cast it down and had destroyed and rooted out the greater part of that forest, so that nothing was left of it, nor could its place be recognized, then that vine began to come with the fountain in peace and great tranquility. And it came to a place which was not far from that cedar, and they brought the cedar which had been cast down to it. And I beheld, and lo, that vine opened its mouth and spoke and said to that cedar, Art you not that cedar which was left to the forest of wickedness, and by those whose means wickedness persisted, and was wrought all those years, and goodness never? And you kept conquering that which was not yours, and to that which was your you did never show compassion, and you did keep extending your power over those who were far from you, and those who drew near you. You did hold fast in the toils of your wickedness, and you did uplift yourself always as one that could not be rooted out. But now your time has sped, and your hour is come. Do you also therefore depart, O cedar, after the forest which departed before you, and become dust with it, and let your ashes be mingled together, and now recline in anguish, and rest in torment till your last time come, in which you will come again and be tormented still more. This is speaking about Lucifer, Ezekiel chapter 31. He was the great cedar that all the birds and everything found uh, refuge in. And after these things, I saw that cedar burning, and the vine growing itself, and all around it the plain full of unfading flowers. And I indeed awoke and arose. The interpretation of the vision. And I prayed and said, O Lord, my Lord, you do always enlighten those who are led by understanding. Your law is life, and your wisdom is right guidance. Make known to me, therefore, the interpretation of the vision. For you know that my soul hath always walked in your law, and from my earliest days I departed not from your wisdom. And he answered and said unto me, Baruch, this is the interpretation of the vision which you have seen. As you have seen the great forest which lofty and rugged mountains surrounded, this is the world. Behold, the days come, and the kingdom will be destroyed, which once destroyed Zion, and it will be subjected to that which comes after it. Moreover, that also again after a time will be destroyed, and another, a third, will arise, and that also will have dominion for its time, and will be destroyed. And after these things, a fourth kingdom will arise, whose power will be harsh and evil, far beyond those which were before it. And it will rule many times as the forest on the plain, and it will hold fast for times, and will exalt itself more than the cedars of Lebanon, and by it the truth will be hidden, and all those who are polluted with iniquity will flee to it as evil beasts flee and creep into the forest. And it will come to pass, when the time of its consummation, that it should fall, has approached. And then the principate of my Messiah will be revealed, which is like the fountain and the vine. And when it is revealed, it will root out the multitude of its host, And as touching that which you have seen, the lofty cedar which was left of that forest, and the fact that the vine spoke those words with it which you did hear, this is the word. The last leader of that time will be left alive when the multitude of his hosts will be put to the sword, and he will be bound, and they will take him up to Mount Zion. And my Messiah will convict him of all his impieties, and will gather and set before him all the works of his hosts. And afterwards he will put him to death and protect the rest of my people, which shall be found in the place which I have chosen. And his principate will stand forever until the world of corruption is at an end, and until the times aforesaid are fulfilled. This is your vision, and this is the interpretation. The next portion is the destiny of the apostates and of the proselytes. And again, it has to do with the division of the harvest of the wheat and the tares. But we do not have time to go into it. Perhaps I will do one more show as a follow-up to this one and share with you the rest of the important parts of this book that I would like to bring forth with you, and then maybe go into and begin another. Depends on the timing, but we'll see how it all unfolds. But yes, we'll do another follow-up segment maybe next week or the week thereafter, depending on guests, or if we have AMAs or whatever. I have to check our schedule, but I think it's a worthy read, and I think that it will benefit all of you. And again, so many are not familiar with this text, the Apocalypse of Baruch, and how appropriate is it for these times. And, the separation of the 7 years of the tribulation, the 42 months of the tribulation and the great tribulation into 12 segments, and how these 6 segments are individualized into the various aspects of what Christ spoke about with regard to, the liars and the deceivers and the false Christ, the wars and rumors of wars and the commotions, the earthquakes and famines and pestilences and the waves and the sea roaring, how there would be no time worse than this, that there would be a persecution of the saints, the release of the demons, the Shadim, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the times of the second coming of the Son of Man. I mean, this is again one of those manuscripts which fulfills and covers in great detail what we see being affirmed in the Revelation narrative. And also with, one of my most favorite texts again, and I would implore everybody to read this manuscript, the Revelation of St. John the Theologian, that it goes into great detail on all of these aspects as well. But thank you, Shay and Mama P, Sherry, Jamali, History, Adrian, Truth Seeker, Hebrew Hawaiian, Bob Hawk, welcome. Grace, thank you again for listening to Destiny Lab. There's so many great comments, and I appreciate all of you. And as we do in the other shows, we'll take more time to read more. Sherry says it's an amazing that everyone is to know beforehand at the time of the resurrection whether they are considered to be righteous or wicked before assembling together in the valley of Kidron. Yeah, every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Christ is Messiah, King, and Lord. Jamali says, thank you. You are welcome. Kay says, thank you, Zen. Shalom. Shalom to you too, sister. I appreciate all of you, and you are so very welcome. Thank you again for taking the time to join me this evening to listen and to hear, the word of the Most High, to hear the prophecies and the revelations that have been gathered and preserved and protected for us for a time such as this. Because we are those that are blessed to inherit all of this wisdom. Thank you, Dan.
Censorship and
Be
regulation is
blessed all.
becoming an
Good night.
ever-growing
Shalom.
problem in today's modern